Luke joins us now. I know he's been a very busy man. Luke, first of all, if it's not breaking stories about computer hard drives with Debbie Wasserman Schultz and all, everything else, you've broken some of the biggest stories, I think, really, and most underreported stories in the past like 5-6 years now. And this story, this is amazing. And first off, thank you for writing about this, because, this is a whole, there's one thing to be a pundit. It's another thing to be a parent, and it's terrifying to be a parent right now. It's terrifying. This case with Scott Smith, I think a lot of people across America saw themselves in Scott Smith. Talk to us about where things stand. Where is everything with the latest on this? Because as we understand now, there wasn't just one case, there were 2 cases. And he has now, because of that viral video that we've all seen, this misdemeanor disorderly conduct charge. And from your piece, we're to understand that the corrupt Soros-funded prosecutor is actually showing up herself to prosecute this misdemeanor charge. What's the latest?
Well, apparently there was just complete pandemonium at the Loudoun County School Board meeting. They just happened to have a meeting last night, and people were out for blood. The school system never really told me anything before the story. They put out a statement an hour ago that they never bothered to send to me, but it doesn't say much. It just says, student privacy, blah, blah, blah. They do seem to acknowledge, what I reported, that there was a sexual assault allegation and an arrest 4 months ago, and then another one by the same kid last week. They said they did refer it to police, originally in May. Now, as my story says, when Scott Smith got the call in May that his daughter was in a, quote, she was physically assaulted in the bathroom, what he found is this was not a physical assault. You guys don't seem to be worked up about it at all at school. You're underplaying it. And Scott says that, well, actually, I've corroborated that they called the police on him for being an unruly parent, because he was so mad that his daughter had apparently been raped and that the school system didn't seem to be doing much. So they did call the police on him back in May. But they also, somehow, probably, whether it was because the cops came originally to harass him, and when they were there, they found, holy cow, this is real. The kid was charged with felony forcible sodomy. But the school board then, 3 weeks later, told the public it's a, quote, red herring to have concerns about transgender, because Time magazine says there's no such thing as a transgender predator, and our statistics at Loudoun County Schools say we've never had a bathroom assault. And so that's not addressed at all in the statement they just put out. Another update in the last couple hours is that the Loudoun County Sheriff Department has confirmed some of the most important aspects of the story on the record to other news outlets, including the Daily Mail in England and Fox News. So I had quite a bit of independent evidence that I'd gotten on my own while they were hiding. Everyone was hiding behind their juveniles, so we can't say anything. This story is, it's seen additional corroboration in the about 24 hours since it went online at the Daily Wire.
And some of that corroboration, we're talking to Luke Rosiak with the Daily Wire, who broke this story about Loudoun County Public Schools and the dad, Scott Smith, whose freshman daughter had been raped in the bathroom this past May. One of the things that immediately I saw a lot of people go in on was, oh, well, where's the evidence? Well, there was, and from what I understand, it was confirmed that she had been taken to a hospital where a rape kit, they actually performed the evidence gathering procedures for that kit, and they actually were able to obtain evidence, from what I understand. Is that correct?
Correct. The lawyer told me they did, a SANE examination and a buccal swab, and both came back favorable to the case. And, remember, this is the same prosecutor that tried to put the dad in jail. The juvenile, it's kind of a different branch of the prosecutor's office that handles juvenile crimes. But the fact that they pursued this case, kind of speaks for itself. I mean, they were going for a conviction. They had a plea deal in the works for felony sex assault that would have put this kid on the sex offender registry. I mean, this was a legit case, and the school system didn't tell anyone. The kid wound up at a different school a mile away, even as they told parents, so basically this happened in August the timeline is May 28th, the first assault happens. June 22nd, they try to pass the transgender policy. There's a lot of chaos, and the victim's dad is arrested. August 11th, they finally passed the policy, but by that time, the dad has received a no trespassing order and gone through court. And then October 6th, there's a new arrest against the same kid.
Wow.
So they had just kind of moved this kid and hidden the problem, and now we have, unfortunately, another girl who's been victimized.
And I'm going to ask you about that second case in a minute. One of the things that you had posted, talking with Luke Rosiak of Daily Wire, that you had posted in your story was that the school was going to handle it internally, whatever that means. And of course, obviously, that would make anybody mad if that was their child that had just been violated like that. Do you have any idea what they meant by that? Because it sounds like the meaning was do nothing.
Yeah, I mean, that's, the dad showed up at the school and he was mad because he felt like they didn't seem to be doing much of anything. And he says that like 6 cops showed up to get him to deal with this
not the
unruly
suspect,
parent.
to go after the dad who's upset.
And so now, as of an hour ago, the school's claiming, well, we were going to, and we ultimately did tell the cops, and they're claiming, well, we were always going to, but there's strong evidence in my original story that suggests they were more interested in the dad. The principal sent out an all-community email the afternoon of this incident, and he said, our community, our student body, there's no threat to our student body, but there was an incident today with an unruly person who shouldn't have been on campus. That's why students saw the sheriff's department at our facility. If you needed to get counseling from having to see some police officers, our counselors are available to you. He explicitly said there was no harm, no threat to the student body. And so there was one incident today, and it was this father.
And no mention about the rape in the bathroom. Wow. Talking with Luke Rosiak of the Daily Wire, whose bombshell story has just completely changed this whole DOJ versus parents and parents of domestic terrorist narrative. The second case. Now, we don't know a lot about this. It's not as public, at least from what I've seen, Luke. The details aren't as public as no one's dad showed up at a school board meeting for this one. It doesn't mean it's any less. I mean, we just don't know exactly what that entails, but we do know that the suspect and the accused who's been charged with felony forcible sodomy in this case went on to reoffend after he was put into a different school a mile away, you said. What else? Do we know anything else? What have you learned about the second case? Have the parents spoken out?
So the Loudoun County Sheriff typically does not put out press releases about juvenile incidents. Okay. I believe they put out a press release on October 6th because they wanted to put pressure on the school system for covering up the first one and because they knew it was the same kid. So they put out a press release saying a 15-year-old kid whose name we're not going to say because he's a juvenile was arrested at this particular school, Broad Run, for the forcible abduction of a child, a girl who was held in an empty classroom and sexually assaulted. I was able to learn the identity of that from a government official, the identity of that unnamed juvenile, and it was the same name as the person in the previous case. So, the first one was in a bathroom, the second one was in an empty classroom. It's kind of like, you got to remember, last year the schools were closed most of the year. So when this kid did this thing in May 28th, that was kind of like right after he got back in school from coronavirus. Right. And then they had summer, and then October 6th, that's right near the beginning of the school year. So it's almost like this guy barely took any time off between alleged sexual assaults.
Right. No, it sounds like a predator in the making for sure. Talking with Luke Rosiak with the Daily Wire. Luke, talk to me about this prosecutor, because you go into, in your story, the disorderly conduct prosecution and this Buddha Bibaraj, which I'm sure I'm not getting her name correctly, but you get into her history a little bit and how she won with 1% of the vote. And she also she was forced to, she was disqualified from a previous case because of the relationship, as I understand it, that she had to the individual involved. Apparently, they were all part of that, what everyone calls Chardonnay Antifa, that anti-racist Facebook, parents of Loudoun County on Facebook. Talk to me about this, because I'm astonished that she has not been forcibly removed from this case involving Scott Smith.
Yeah, Loudoun, I broke a story a while back about that, what's become known as Chardonnay Antifa. A lot of attempts to intimidate and silence parents who dare to be involved in school policy. There's a lot of people who think that schools are the fiefdom of administrators and teachers unions and this small cartel of activists, and they truly thought it was theirs. And if a regular parent showed up, they'd say, "Are you lost? Why are you here?" And so they started badgering all of these people. But Buda Biberij is one of these George Soros backed prosecutors. Soros funded $800,000 to her campaign to run for county prosecutor in this mid-sized suburb. $800,000 is
That's
like, people
crazy.
don't spend that much on a local race.
Yeah.
And so even with all that money, that took her over the line to win by literally 1%. Loudoun County is not a far left place, but it has now one of these Chicago-style prosecutors or LA-style that's like, we're not going to bring charges. We got to end mass incarceration. And so she's letting hardcore criminals out of jail all the time. And she's the chief elected prosecutor, so of course she's got a team of assistant DAs that work for her and do all the work. Well, when Scott Smith was charged with misdemeanor disorderly conduct, it wasn't an assistant DA who showed up. It was the actual top prosecutor. And she sought jail time, which is an unheard of disposition for disorderly conduct. So they were coming at him hard, and it was clearly because he was expressing an alternative view to the sort of entrenched cartel of far left people that had embedded in this school system. And, people are trying to recall the school board members, but under Virginia law, the prosecutor plays a role in this. So we're kind of in a tough spot here. We're heading into the governor's race where Terry McAuliffe says parents shouldn't play a role, but education has become the issue in Virginia because national politics honestly don't even matter compared to this stuff. And you've said it, you've been such a champion of this, Dana. Local politics, people are waking up, right? It's what matters. It's where we can make a difference.
Absolutely. And well said. And you've been fantastic at covering this. There's no one better, honestly. And I tell people this, I'm like, there's nobody better than Luke Rosiak when he gets a hold of a story for the love, which is good. It's good for us. Last question for you, Luke. Luke Rosiak with Daily Wire. How does this end? Because because this prosecutor is involved, as you just said, with any school board recalling, and then this case with the dad, and then of course Terry McAuliffe and the parents, and then at the very center of it, you have this freshman high schooler who now the whole nation at the most vulnerable time in her life knows what happened to her, and I cannot imagine this. I mean, what Scott Smith said last night. He said that him and his wife had to rebuild their daughter over the summer, and it broke my heart. How does this end?
I think this ends with Americans stop viewing the other side as evil. A lot of people saw Scott Smith and they said, I know why he's here. He's a bigot. He hates gays. He's evil. And they're on that Facebook Chardonnay Antifa saying people who don't agree with us are evil. Americans are not evil. We must stop demonizing people. Scott Smith was a human being. We need to learn our lesson here. A lot of people screwed up big time when they put him as the avatar of domestic terrorism. They're wrong. We've got to come together and understand that it's okay to have differing views, and we all have reasons for believing what we do. The other thing I'll say is I think this has got to end with the Virginia governor's race, because things are going to get real bad real fast in Virginia if we can't get a hold of these schools. The things they're doing are not democratic policies. They're much worse than that. There are people that, are Bill Clinton voters, kind of normal people that traditionally vote Democrat, who are saying, look, I'm not a Republican, but what's going on in the schools right now, I've got to cast a vote against Terry McAuliffe and for Glenn Youngkin, because honestly, do I hate, Republicans more than I love my own kid? I've got to do what's best for my kid, because this is nuts.
Wow. That is a heavy realization when people get to that point, I tell you. Luke Rosiak with the Daily Wire, always phenomenal work. Please keep us updated. Of course, we'll be watching whatever you put out as always, but phenomenal job on this. And I don't know if this girl would be getting justice had you not written this story. I really don't think she would have. Thank you so much, Luke. You're just
Great to
American
see you again,
hero.
Dana.
Thank you. Good to see you.